Okay, hello everybody. My name is Ndapewoshali Ndahafa and I work for the Museums Association of Namibia. And it's actually quite interesting that I can't be there in person today. So I have to do this digitally. While my presentation is really looking at digital alternatives to I guess exhibitions and life that would have to be done physically. Um, I'm glad that while I'm not there, I still have the opportunity to connect with you. And I said that to say I'm talking to you today about rock sites outside of the sites themselves. So I'm going to use a case study of the Museums Association of Namibia, who I'm going to an institution from now on. I'm going to refer to as MAN because it is quite a mouthful. But looking at the virtual and mobile exhibitions that we've developed over the years as a case study. So the first part of my presentation is going to be me talking about what we do as an institution, who we are, what we aim to do, who we represent. And then I'm going to go into a case study of what we've done regarding taking sites out of the sites themselves. So that's museums out of the museums themselves, or exhibitions or information. Um, and then I'm just going to talk to you a little bit because it is a case study. I'm going to close off with some lessons learned and some challenges that we faced and how we overcame them, and how we would like to learn from you as well. Right. So let's start with who is Man. We're 34 years old now. We were launched in 1990, but since 2002, we were officially recognized by the Namibian government as a voice of Namibian museums, and our mandate is really we're an umbrella body, so our mandate is really representing museums and museum professionals in Namibia and supporting them in different ways, which I'll get into. So our vision, or we have our mission and we have a vision, obviously. So our mission is mainly is to be a facilitating organization with an emphasis on establishing, maintaining, and strengthening relationships between the Namibian heritage arts and culture sector, but also within heritage arts and culture sectors, or between heritage art and culture institutions in the region, so that's SADC in Africa and across the world. Our vision is really to be able to define, support, and aid museums and museum institutions to establish and reinforce the museum profession in Namibia. And then, of course, as I spoke about earlier, to facilitate cooperation and mutual assistance, and really ultimately to emphasize the role played by museums and the museum profession. And I'm going to talk about what a museum is because our definition is a bit more broad than the I think than the average. Um, but is to really emphasize their role within the socioeconomic development of Namibia and of course the communities that they serve. So what do we do? How do we try to ensure that we live up to our vision and our mission? Well, we try to, or we are, we see ourselves as a voice, the voice of Namibian museums. We support and encourage the establishment and development of new museums throughout the country and new exhibitions. We seek to encourage links between museums and other partners so that we enhance, as I said, to enhance their role as both educational resources and tourist attractions to the country at large, but also the particular communities which they serve. We provide training. So part of our support to the sector is to provide training to museum workers and encourage youth to join the sector. And we have a very robust internship program, which you can really read about on our website. We're also proactive to develop a heritage network within Namibia and encourage greater cooperation between other stakeholders or between the different stakeholders in the sector. And if you go to our website recently, or yeah, recently just last week or 2 weeks from now, when you're seeing this, we just completed our 34th annual general meeting and conference, so you can read more about that there. And of course, one of the very important things that we do is we seek the to facilitate the repatriation of cultural property, um, cultural belongings held in museums overseas and in South Africa, to pre and yeah, so to seek the repatriation thereof, and then also look at restitutive processes that go into this, and how we can help facilitate actual restitution and healing. And then also to, of course, to prevent now further illicit trafficking or illegal trade. Um, and then we also participate in international bodies such as ICOM, and when it was in existence, AFRICOM, um, just in order to make sure that Namibian issues stemming out of our engagements within the Namibian heritage arts and culture sector are raised at more at international platforms. And lastly, we seek to build cooperative links between our sister organization and neighboring countries. So, what is a Namibian museum? This is a very interesting question I get a lot, because the idea of a museum um, is very often considered sort of the European idea of a museum, which is a kind of a building with, spoils from colonial conquests or whatever. So, a building with glass cabinets and objects, museum objects behind these glass cabinets. But we consider a Namibian museum to be something a little bit different, or maybe a lot different, and I'll talk about that in detail. But let me start off by telling you about our membership. So we have 4 different types of memberships. The first is an ordinary member, just you and I we're interested in the museum practice. We're interested in heritage arts and culture, whether it be from our academic backgrounds or our work backgrounds, or just general interest. We are people who are, yeah, interested, and we want to stay in touch. We also want to have these opportunities and access to this different resources that the institution provides. So those are honorary members, just people. Then we have our honorary life members, who are people who have made a significant contribution to man. This usually comes in the form of previous staff members, previous executive committee members, etc. So these are people that we call our living libraries together. The ordinary members and the honorary members are living libraries. They are people who are full of knowledge. They're the knowledge keepers. And without them, no institution can survive or can thrive without the people. There is no institution without the people. So then we have institutional members. So these are our museum members. These can either be associate, so this is a project. Associate members are people who have a project or an idea to open a museum, but they're not open yet. There is no physical space yet. And then we have our museum members that also fall under institutional members, which are institutions that are open, so open to the public. You can walk in, you can engage, you can experience. And then we have our corporate members, which are institutions that are not necessarily within the heritage arts and culture space, but are interested in still collaborating or being formed or supporting our endeavors. So let's get into the cracks of what is the Namibian Museum and what should the Namibian Museum experience be like. And this is something that we've sort of fine-tuned over the last maybe 2-3 years, as to what do we see a Namibian museum as, right? Because we get this question a lot, and are we just trying to replicate a European museum? And the answer is no. But then that answer is not enough. So we have to define it for ourselves as to what do we see a Namibian museum is. So we started this idea and this concept years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. But in the last maybe 2, 3 years, we really tried to like solidify what do we mean. So number one, we've in our opinion, and by we I mean man, as an institution, museums in Namibia, or Namibian museums, should be community research centers, and this is in educational resource centers, cultural resource centers, historical, scientific, artistic resource centers. And they should be depositories for both tangible and intangible cultural heritage. They should also be, for us, which is maybe more important than others, we need to emphasize always that we believe that museums should be organic and current. And you'll see this coming out in our work that I talk about later, but they should be able to keep up. They should be able to learn. They should be learning organizations, not organizations with learning programs. Well, also that, but more by their nature, be learning organizations. And I say this because man is a learning organization, and we can't preach what we don't do, right? So we emphasize a lot on knowing better and doing better. So museums, when they are approached, or when they are when they have new information, are then meant to learn from that and incorporate it as much as possible. And because of that, then they would be, as a result, they would be alive and vibrant, such as Namibian culture. Very, very importantly, museums are not just a space for entertainment. They are socioeconomic actors, and drivers of domestic tourism and also international tourism. And then, of course, they are entertainment centers. Not only, but they are also meant to be entertaining. Okay, so let's get into this presentation. What am I talking about today? Today I'm talking about two things: mobile museums slash mobile exhibitions. So basically, um, going into a a a virtual space, right? So firstly, what is a virtual museum or exhibition? It's defined by the people who speak English better than I do, as a collection of digitally recorded images, sounds, files, text documents, and other data of historical, scientific, or cultural interest, that can be accessed through electronic media, right? So that is virtual. What is mobile? Which is something different, right? What is a mobile exhibition or a mobile museum? Well, it's basically how we see it, how we've defined it at Man, and I'm hoping everyone agrees, is that it is a museum educational outreach program that brings the museum to the people rather than the other way around. So this is why I'm talking about. It's like in this context of our workshop here this week, or over these 2 weeks, is, for example, taking the rock art sites to the people, rather than, for especially when they can't physically come to the rock art sites, right? So what are the characteristics of something like this? How do you even begin to conceptualize something like a virtual or mobile exhibition or mobile museum or mobile rock art site? Um, First of all, you need to consider accessibility and inclusivity, and that is in any, I think it's a very broad, it's in any environment, it's a very broad conversation to have. What does accessibility mean? Um, what does inclusivity mean? Is it physical accessibility? Of course, now we're talking about taking them outside of their, what we place where you would expect to find them. um, but also accessibility in the form of language, and considering people who are differently abled. So not just spoken language, but written language. Also considering, and of course, sign language, etc. And also considering, like, for example, the sign language um, relevant to the area that we're in. So I mean, we know that there are different, just like there are different versions of like English and Namlish, and there's also different versions of sign language. So um, how do you then ensure that you're engaging and you're making your exhibition or your museum really accessible, especially when it's outside of the space where you may have already had tools to address some of these needs. Um, they also need to be interactive. We also look at a very strong characteristic of mobile or virtual exhibitions as having multimedia content. So in really ensuring that you have good images, 3D models, videos, sound recordings, as much or as much of a combination of them as you can. And then having a user-friendly interface. I mean, really ensuring that, especially for online installments or inline exhibitions, that they're easy to navigate for everybody, not for those who are just tech whizzes or those who are familiar with the practice. They need to be educational resources, and this for us is something that you will see repeating throughout my presentation, is this theme on education and also resources, but also learning as a concept and as an overall umbrella concept. And then, of course, they need to be engagement tools. So looking at features such as social media, comment sessions, and I'll look at that. I'm actually going to talk about the power of the hashtag in a moment. Right. So this brings us to the case study of man, right? Our virtual museums and our mobile museums. Before I can go into what we've done, again, this is something, as I said, we are a learning organization. We are constantly trying to find better ways, more resourceful ways to do things, and that includes constantly developing new policies, constantly updating our policies, whether it be internal or external. And one thing that we actually only kind of really looked at this year was what is our digital and outreach strategy. And it's something we've always had. If you've interacted with man before, you know that there's always been this very deliberate a digital and outreach strategy, but we haven't actually written it down. So this year we did that, and we ultimately it comprises of three things. Number one, we emphasize on digital inclusion and accessibility, and I already spoke in some detail about the different types of accessibility, and what accessibility means. And even just to add on to that, things as I think sometimes overlooked, as you're talking about digital, but how much bandwidth does your website need or your exhibition need? Is it really accessible for everybody, or does it need someone with very privileged high speed internet to actually be able to engage with it? And of course, you do need internet if you're talking about digital, but there are other ways that we're also looking at to really try and see, especially when it comes to things like databases, if there are ways to have them in a way that they're digital but don't need internet. Is that a thing? I don't know. We'll figure it out. So we, as I said, we're learning all the time. But another important thing that we have within our strategy is the collaboration with local partners and local members, but then also collaborations with international partners, which is why we do engagements such as this. It's not just because we enjoy, presenting, but it's because we understand the importance of collaboration. And I'll talk about the importance of collaboration a little bit later. But let's start with the man website. And as we're going through this, I would encourage you to take out your phone. Very seldom does a speaker say, please take out your phone while I'm speaking. But I'm encouraging you to take out your phone because I will be using QR codes to speak about, or to demonstrate what we're doing. So this first QR code is our website. Our website is something we've spent a long time building. And in, I think about 7 years ago, we created a new website. And then about 2 years ago, we revamped it. So we redesigned it in a way that we wanted to make sure that it's more user friendly. I spoke about being user friendly. So this is the landing page of our website, and if you scroll through, you'll find different resources. But one of our most important resources is our mobile exhibitions. So our mobile exhibitions are resources we find to be particularly useful for our members. That was for us, it's something we call a museum without walls. So we use we've tried different systems over the years, and now we've settled on this particular system that we find to be very useful. Is 2 by 2 meter banner walls that are double-sided, and we use them as they can fold up easily. They can get into a bag, a car. You can put them in a boot of a small car, a trunk, I don't know, depending on which part of the world you're from. And you can just pack up and go, and they can travel. So they've traveled across the world. And if you go to our website, you'll actually see this video. The screenshot is actually from a video of how to set them up. Now, this is our catalog also on our website. If you scan the QR code now, you'll see the catalog on our website, which has these mobile exhibitions, and they're all available for free loaning within our members. But not only, we don't only limit them to our members. So schools have taken them out, have loaned them out, institutions, and we have quite an interesting catalog, which is based on the work we've done over the last few years. So there's also the concept of temporary exhibitions, and this is why I wanted to just take some time with this one. So this, for example, is an exhibition that we did last year for Namibian Heritage Week, together with everybody that you're with today. This is a temporary exhibition on rock art. You can, if you scan the QR code, you can read more about Namibian Heritage Week and what we did. But this one was in collaboration, of course, with the different project partners. As you can see, the many, many logos at the bottom. But it was hosted at the Franco-Namibian Cultural Center. So you can see the images. So this is a more temporary uh, construct, but you are taking the rock art site to the peoples. So this is in the middle of the city, Windhoek. So you can see, like, for example, people engaging with the rock art sites that they would not have been able to do if and if it, I mean, in Windhoek, so they would have to actually travel to them. So, um, with that said, we also have our website is also a source, a resource for our members to be able to put all of their information, and you can visit kind of a snippet of of our members' museums on our website. And we also provide a space for our members that don't have websites. And sometimes we link to those who do have websites, but it's also a space for those who don't have websites, because this is now again a way to bring the museum to you outside of the museum. You can scan the QR code, and you can see that we represent on the website. They're represented according to a sort of geographic region, not political region, but more geographic, like so north, south, central, and then you can actually click on each one of them. So if you click on one of the museums we developed from scratch is the Museum of Namibian Music, which is on Thea. If you were to click on north, you would get to the Museum of Music. And so this is what the museum kind of looks like, their pages look like. So we have some feature image that will kind of like, draw you in, we hope, and say, what is that? It looks nice. And then we have some information for this one. For example, we had a virtual launch, which I'll also just talk about in a second, but you can watch that on our website as well. So you can know, it's like attending the launch of the museum 4 years, 2 years later at this point, and 4 years and 10 years and 30 years later. Then we also have information about the different galleries, opening times, the geographic location, and then what one of my colleagues, Nehoa, refers to as our I think this is the VIP items or images. We just have a selection of some images that you can see in the top right corner there, that we think are most enticing about the museum and will make you want to go there physically. Because of course the point is not to they never go to the actual museum or they see the actual exhibition or rock art site in this case. So this is also another concept that we had, is we were working on this project during COVID, and we couldn't launch. So we thought, what do we do? We can't travel, we're locked down, but we do have some information. So what did we do? We created a virtual museum, and it's the first of its kind in Namibia. It's basically a website. We wanted to have more functionality, more 3D, virtual reality type of functionality. But for now, it's mainly a website, but it also has an online shop that if you scan, you can see there's an online shop that is a free platform that we've created for Namibian fashion designers, anybody within jewelers, except anybody within the sector, the fashion industry, they can sell their items online for free. So we also really looked at the YouTube channel, and this is again during COVID. We looked at the YouTube channel as a stronger resource, a resource that we can do more with. And so if you look at our YouTube channel, we now have themes according to launches, Heritage Week, projects, and it's another way to be able to bring exhibitions and information and especially with the living libraries, bring them to people. So we have interviews on here, where our living libraries, people who are knowledge keepers, talk to us about different aspects of heritage arts and culture, about specific cultural material, or about music, or about anything really. So as I said, during COVID we were faced with this kind of maybe I'm saying during COVID, during the COVID lockdowns, let me say that we were faced with having to be innovative and finding ways. And I said, as I said, we're a learning organization. So we had to look at different ways to kind of still reach people. Our work is with people. So we looked at virtual launches. So we launched the Museum of Namibian Fashion, the Museum of Namibian Music, and the Zambezi Museum. We launched them all online. And then at the time, we actually did pre-recordings, but now, of course, like today, we can do things in hybrid. We can have pre-recordings or live streaming. And so we've also done a lot of live streaming now, and also hybrid events. So where some people like myself today are presenting from a different part of the world and other people are there physically. So these are some of the virtual launches that we've had and live streaming events. We also started a digital virtual museum tour and guide for museums where we just literally take the information on the website, and this is particularly on Facebook. So we would take the information on the website and have a featured museum every week and just talk to you about and show some of our images from those museums, and just entice, just as a way to keep engaging people, but also to engage them, to entice them to visit the museum when, at the time, it was when the country opens up again, or when the world opens up again. And then, of course, there's the power of the hashtag. I mean, the ability, especially for those of you who are interested in data, the ability to put everything in one place, and to find everything in one place is something that is continuously challenging because of our different systems, our different norms, cultures, etc. But the hashtag makes it possible for us to say hashtag Namibian Heritage Week or hashtag Museums Association, and just encourage everybody to then hashtag their individual photos, their institutional photos, etc. And then at the end of the day, after the week or after the event, we can come back down and then really look at the impact. It's a really good way to look at the impact and participation, especially for digital engagement. So I'm going to close off with really looking at our challenges, our lessons learned, and our how we, I don't want to say solutions. I did say solutions in the slide, but really how we address them and how we would encourage other people to address them. So firstly, there are technological barriers and resource limitations, like I said, bandwidth, internet access just in itself as a starting point, computers and cell phones as a starting point. So the actual infrastructure, and and the so like the physical technology and access to physical technological, resources, and then the access to internet. And then, of course, there's another challenge, which is exhibition design for museum education. This is a very niche kind of area, and so to address that, we looked at ways of training and capacity building. Um, we we do have at our at least once a year we have capacity building workshops for our members and just people who are generally interested in the field. Um, as far as technology goes, we do try in as much as we can to make sure that we are within frameworks or areas that are accessible. But I mean, when it comes to um, the digital side of exhibitions or digital platforms, virtual platforms, we are aware that it is still an elitist type of approach, and that's why we also have the mobile exhibition, physically moving, and can physically be in one place one day and one place the next, and that kind of counters in as much as humanly possible. Of course, there is more online, but at least there is some that is also can be accessed and can move outside of the site without online presence. And then, of course, there is the digital literacy, and or access, right? Again, access amongst the target audience. So we are really trying as an institution to work more with tech companies and educational institutions to meet this gap, to find ways that are innovative. I was even thinking about at some point maybe looking at SSD codes. I'm not sure how they work. I'm just throwing this word out there. But to look at alternative ways to be able to really engage the general public and our members within these frameworks, and really to kind of overcome this exclusivity that goes along with having to have having to use digital platforms. And then another important thing, and I spoke about the power of the hashtag and how it helps us to sort of collate data, but the preservation of this digital data is still very much in the hands of the web developers. For example, if Instagram closes down today, or X closes down today, Facebook closes down, then all of that data store, all that data that you had stored on this platform goes with it. So we don't in Namibia at the moment really have cheap and or free online platforms that especially that can we can that are developed in Namibia and we can sort of use. So we are obviously using the same as the rest of the world. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, or X, sorry, we're on TikTok, we're on all of this, but um there's no centralized Namibian database or platform, not database, but platform where we can then store our information and collect like a Namibian version of Instagram or TikTok, where um, we are not relying on platforms created in different countries. And for that, because of that, we look at different ways to continuously update and maintain digital platforms, the ones that we are on currently, and of course looking at not maybe, but consulting educational institutions like the Namibia University of Science and Technology, at looking at developing platforms for Namibians in Namibia that are based, yeah, for Namibians in Namibia. So, future prospects, as I close off, we are planning more virtual exhibitions, and mobile exhibitions both. And we're planning to look at how we can take the mobile exhibitions, or have a version of the mobile exhibition that is also a virtual version of the exhibition. So that is what we're really looking at. We're trying to achieve in as much as I guess, humanly possible. Um, and then we're also continuing the process of filming, either filming pre-recording launches and exhibitions, but even when they're not pre-recorded, to if they're live events, to then record these live events and make them accessible online for those who couldn't attend physically. We're also looking into the use of AI, machine learning, and advanced AR and VR, which we are very, very a little bit unseasoned in, but we're trying to really open up these doors. And then, of course, for us, it's important to expand the reach and impact of man's digital and mobile initiatives, and then online and offline databases. So I spoke about really trying to have databases that are online but also accessible when you're offline. It's ambitious, but we are ambitious as an institution. So in summary, we're all in this together. I spoke about different roles of educational institutions, our partner organization, our living libraries, our institutional members and associate members, really to be able to do this well, to be able to move exhibitions, rock art sites, museums outside of the site themselves and take them to other people, take them to other sites, take them to other countries, regions, towns. Number one, we need to embrace digital transformation in cultural heritage. We need to stop being afraid of it. It is new, and we are always, as human beings, a little bit hesitant and a little bit fearful sometimes about something that's new, but we need to embrace it. The world is moving and we need to move along with it, and we need to support each other and collaborate. So at this point, I would have loved to have a conversation with you all and maybe take some questions and answers, but obviously I'm not there. So I would love to encourage you to please do, if you had any thoughts, if you have best practices, if there um ways in which you as an institution or as an individual have addressed some of our challenges and you would like to recommend to us, we would love to hear from you. You can write to us. You can, yeah, so our contact details are on the page on the screen right now. Please, we are very open, and as I said, we are a learning organization, so we are open and happy to receive both positive and maybe not so positive feedback and criticisms, as long as it's constructive. And so I'm really hoping that I will hear from at least 3 of you after watching this, when you get back home or once you take a look at the website and the different platforms that we have, and maybe you can let us know what you think. So we're here to listen, and we'd love to hear from you. And I'm also just want to thank the conference organizers for really COSMO-ART for putting this together and allowing me to have me outside the site, in the site, and really having the opportunity to have this engagement and still connect while I'm so far away. And I really hope that the rest of the conference goes really, really well for everybody, and that you learn so much from one another and you have a really great time connecting with one another. And with that said, yeah, thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
So because we were afraid the connection was not enough good inside the rooms, that's why Ndapewoshali, she recorded in advance her talk. But she also sent me an email saying if there are any questions, perhaps Tangeni and Karina can answer for me. So, or perhaps also Lenishwa. So if you have some questions, please ask, and we will see if they can answer.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to understand the relationship between your organization and the National Museums where Karina works, and maybe Heritage. The other one. Especially when they do their mobile museums, they go out and showcase. Do they showcase museum collections, and how is that arranged? Is it a private organization, and how is that arranged? Thank you.
Who would like to answer?
Thank you, Kevin, for the question. I am going to try to answer like it's Ndapewoshali, but also I think she invested some power in myself as per her presentation, and also as per the institution. MEN, which is Museums Association of Namibia, it's an NGO, a non-governmental organization. And in her presentation, she spoke about different members, including honorary members. So I am one of the honorary members because I am one of their executive committee member. We are 6 of us. So I am going to answer as an EC member. Like I said, MEN is an NGO. The relationship between MEN and National Museum of Namibia, where I work, is National Museum of Namibia is under the umbrella of MEN, because MEN is an umbrella of all the museums in Namibia. So they are in charge of developing museums, they are in charge of building capacity for museum employees, and they are in charge of more or less marketing all our museum as per her presentation. You asked, then what do they do as an organization? I wouldn't want to dilute what she already said, but then when they do the exhibitions that they do, most of them are mobile exhibitions, others are museum as a structure. She mentioned 3, which is Museum of Namibian Music, Museum of Namibian Fashion, and Zambezi Museum. These are structures. You are working into an institution as a museum. But others, apart from those 3, they are exhibitions. And it's different exhibitions on, let's say, Muti exhibition, which is on medicines of Namibia. We had one which was on the contract labor system of Namibia. And last year, together with COSMO-ART, just after the workshop of COSMO-ART, we had an exhibition which was in Windhoek, and it was on rock art. And the panels were giving like you are at a rock art site. So that was a collaboration between COSMO-ART, which is international, the National Museum of Namibia, where I work, and actually I work close hand in hand with COSMO-ART and the Museums Association of Namibia to develop this exhibition. And Lenisha, who works for the National Heritage Council, she was also part of this exhibition, and it's maybe just because you guys didn't check well, in one of the pictures that were displayed there, she is in the picture. When Ndapewoshali spoke about the rock art. So to maybe sum up this whole mouthful answer that I gave, MEN is umbrella of all the museums in Namibia. So they capacitate the employees, they advertise, they market, they develop exhibition, and they support us with funding, because then they are an NGO and they get it right to apply for funding. Because as a government, for example, my collection, it's a little bit hard for me to apply for fund for supporting my collection with maybe any equipment that I might need. I will not get money because I work for government. But through MEN, if I need any assistance, I can approach them with an idea or with a project that I saw or a call that I saw. They will be able to apply for me or assist in applying for that fund. Money comes through their account, then I can then do whatever it is that I want to do with my collection, including now things like the Namibian Heritage Week. They usually apply for fund, they get this fund, then they distribute the fund with all the museums in the region. But as individual members or as museum, we need to apply to them so that they can give us this fund so that we can run museum activities that we have. I think
But just perhaps if you can add a point is missing, I think. So from where come from the money going to MAN? You said they applied, so they applied money to whom?
Okay. Men get their funding mainly from a budget from the government. So when the budget run out, this one is going to Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, this one is going to sports, this one is going to tourism, land, whatever. They also have a budget for institutions that are NGOs or institutions which are parastatals. Parastatals for us is institutions which are half government owned and half privately owned, like the institution that she works for. She works for a parastatal institution which get funding from government to run and funding from their sites, because they are managing all the sites in Namibia. Not all of them, some are privately managed, but the ones which are managed by government, they are managed by Lenisha and her colleagues, and half of the money comes from the government, half of the money they generate themselves. So same applies with men. They get a cut from the government budget, then the rest of their running cut of money is from project. So they get to apply to, let's say, UNESCO, they get to apply to maybe the EU, they get to apply to any call that is sent out to support museums and cultural centers.
Ndapewoshali
So I'm going to say thank you first for her presentation and appreciate your capacity to be able to take our questions. My question goes back to that bold statement she made about not reproducing European museums, and she gave that big no. My question is mainly about, because I see that the museumscape has been changing a lot all over the world. So what is that distinction that gives her that bold no, that their institution is so different from European museums?
Oh, okay. This one is a little bit tough for me, but I will try. I would love to say it's an idea, right? That we as men are trying to go with the concept of decolonization. And because we are trying to decolonize, we are trying to run away from the Eurocentric, merging to Afrocentric, if there's something like that. So the Afrocentric, I think it's an idea that we are trying to then a little bit run from whatever was established during the colonial era, so that we kind of move forward, not really independently, because you can then have a future without a past, but get also into the future without being a little bit influenced by the past. So the idea of having a Namibian museum as an entertainment center, as an educational center, as having maybe like a storytelling kind of, not just having lifeless objects which are in a museum without telling a story. Because currently, for example, majority of our museum where you really work into is if we didn't have a guide today and we were just all of us working, we wouldn't have an idea of what's happening, apart from knowing that this is a stone tool. But then if the guide we had this afternoon or this morning was not around to give us the story or the background story of what we are seeing, then we are just seeing more or less, in my own personal capacity, saying lifeless objects without story being attached to the object. So I would love to think what she said there, that we are trying to create our own museums and running away from the European museum is in the context of the little blocks that she have of education, entertainment, I forgot the other three. I hope I answered the question. Maybe if Lenny and Tangeni have something different from what I said.
If I may. Just to add on that, it's just the way that the museum, the space is used. So it's not just a space for representing the historical past. So it's the idea that museums is a space where we can also just present what we refer to as just heritage, which is a pathway to the past, but it's also our current heritage that we practice, like the Museum of Music or the Museum of Medicine. So it's this idea that it's something that's still current, not just creating the space to exhibit things from the deep past. If that also, just to add on to that.
I'm sure Daniel has something.